The Adepta Sororitas is necessarily sprawling in size and structure. Their ranks comprise multiple orders scattered across the galaxy, allowing them to combat threats to the faith wherever they arise. It is the holy duty of the Orders Militant to expurgate such dangers through vehement faith in the destructive power of their sacred weapons. The Orders Militant are the most widely known orders of the Adepta Sororitas, their members commonly known as the Sisters of Battle. Warriors all, each one dedicates themselves to achieving purity of spirit through martial perfection, and follows the most stringent training regimens and doctrines. The number of sisters comprised by the Orders Militant pales in comparison to the sheer scale of soldiery wielded by the Astra Militarum. But the Adepta Sororitas boast a degree of elite martial prowess that is almost unmatched amongst the Imperial Guard. The nominal and ceremonial headquarters of each order lies within the fortified shrine complex of their parent convent. Together known as the Great Convents, each one is a gargantuan physical edifice and represents the senior tier of the organizational hierarchy. The convent sanctorum lies on Ophelia 7, the oldest of the cardinal worlds, while the convent prioris was built within the ecclesiarchal palace upon Holy Terra. Beyond the great convents, each of the Orders Militants oversees a parish within the wider Imperium, throughout which their presence is established via fortified sanctuaries. The oldest of these parishes are ancient, and many cover immense areas of space. Yet, wars of faith do not stop at a parish boundary, while there are heretics still to burn and idolaters to root out. Most orders spread the illumination of the God Emperor to worlds far beyond their primary sanctuaries, establishing far-flung missions and subsidiary chapels to extend the influence of their order and the ecclesiarchy. The weapons, war engines, and exquisitely crafted battle gear of the Orders Militant are supplied to the ecclesiarchy by the tech priests of Mars, under a millennia-old treaty known as the Writ Illuminat. The Adeptus Mechanicus ensure that the elite warriors of the ecclesiarchy are armed in perpetuity. Reaffirmed by each successive ecclesiarch, the Writ Illuminat symbolizes the communion between the Adepta Sororitas and the tech priests of the machine cult, and by its sacred words do the sisters know the adepts of Mars to be loyal servants of the God Emperor, despite their unconventional devotions. Every piece of war gear supplied to the Adepta Sororitas is first taken to either the convent prioris or the convent sanctorum. There, they are blessed by choirs of novitiates in rites that can last for days or even weeks. The order's weapons, such as the Godwin Diaz pattern bolter, are daubed in sacred oils and polished with cloths touched by saints. Every bolt and chain sword tooth is inscribed with verses from the Fede Imperialis, the battle hymn of the Adepta Sororitas, to ensure that its path is true. The hulls of the fearsome battle tanks and the ceramite plating of sculpted power armor are adorned with the Order's traditional colors and illuminated with script from devotional books of prayer, while the armor worn by Sisters of Battle forgoes those auxiliary systems that require a Space Marine's genetically enhanced physiology to function. It still provides the same indomitable degree of protection. Order of Our Martyred Lady. The fires of vengeance burn brightly in every sister of the Order of Our Martyred Lady. They are the deliverers of the God Emperor's holy justice, the dreaded instruments of his will, to whom no sacrifice is too great. And to the clarion call of impassioned prayers, they rain unrelenting destruction upon his enemies. Of all the Orders Militant, there are none more numerous or more widely spread than the Order of Our Martyred Lady. Their name is known by the ruling elites and unwashed masses alike in countless worlds across the galaxy, evoking hope in the righteous and fear amongst the faithless. The Order is renowned for its unrelenting pursuit of those who defy the Emperor by doing harm to his Imperium and its citizens. Xenos marauders, chaos armies, and heretical cults are met with burning fury by the Sisters of Our Martyred Lady, who gather wherever the enemy is found to scour them from existence. The Order was one of the first 4 Orders Militant to be created in the wake of ecclesiarchal reorganization. Originally founded as the Order of the Fiery Heart, its sisters were led by Saint Catherine. Her death, during one of the Order's many wars of faith, sent waves of anguish throughout the Adepta Sororitas. Channeling their grief, Catherine's own order embarked upon an endless quest for retribution. In honor of their fallen matriarch, they became the Order of Our Martyred Lady, and have pursued vengeance against the enemies of their faith ever since. Since the death of their matriarch, the Order of Our Martyred Lady has developed a cult of martyrdom that is unparalleled amongst the sisterhood. All sororitas are taught that to die serving the Emperor is the purest fate his servants can hope for. But amongst the Sisters of Our Martyred Lady, this ideal is expressed so fervently that it can appear as though they have a death wish. Isolated battle sisters stand bravely against onrushing hordes of foes. Hymns of defiance and reports of bolt guns rising to a simultaneous crescendo. And when the blades of the foe hack into the sisters' flesh, they give their souls willingly up to the God Emperor. Such noble deaths are met with shouts of praise from the slain sisters' comrades. For it is by such unwavering loyalty and faith that the Emperor's gaze is drawn to the battlefield. The Sisters of Our Martyred Lady employ tactics that see their formations spread like fire, advancing inexorably as they reduce all who stand before them to ash. Yet, their approach to warfare is far from undisciplined. Catherine was a devoted student of military doctrine, and the Order of Our Martyred Lady has upheld her teachings. its sisters are able to switch from one strategy to another with frightening speed and efficacy. The Order of our Martyred Lady holds fortified sanctuaries on many Imperial worlds. Some of these sanctuaries operate in relative isolation, existing far beyond the established boundaries of the Order's parish. But the majority are located in the Segmentum Obscurus. The broad distribution of the Order's preceptories has seen the Sisters of our Martyred Lady engage in many of the Imperium's most grueling war zones. On Armageddon, the Sisters defended the Sanctorum of St. Catherine against the rampaging orc hordes of the belligerent warlord Ghazghkull Thraka. Though fully half of their number was martyred, the sheer grit of the Sisters drew orcs from other battlefronts to join the siege. The Order also fought on Cadia during the 13th Black Crusade of Apollon the Despoiler. Their faith and unflinching firepower making the traitors pay in blood for every step they took. Although the Great Rift now divides many of the Order's sanctuaries, the Sisters of our Martyred Lady have not relented in their quest to avenge the Imperium's fallen heroes. They stand dauntless against the chaos forces that pour from newly opened warp storms, and they march out to annihilate any foe that would prey upon humanity's beleaguered defenders. The fire of their spirit is a sign of hope, that even in this time of horror, the Emperor has not abandoned his faithful servants. Junith Eruida sweeps into battle wreathed in holy fire and holding high the mace of castigation. Riding within the pulpit of St. Helene's Basilica, she hovers across the battlefield upon thrumming waves of holy energy. The pulpit's heavy flamers swivel seemingly of their own accord, seeking out the heretical and the faithless, and immolating them without mercy. As the pyres blaze higher, the Canoness Superior's voice rings out over their furious crackling, her every utterance as sharp and clear as the bells of Ophelia 7. No matter how outnumbered, how bloodied they may be, every true Imperial servant who hears her words feels the fire of faith kindle anew in their breast. They surge back into the fight with a prayer on their lips and righteous hatred in their eyes. This is Eurida's greatest gift from the Emperor, this undying flame of absolute belief that leaps to all those around her as though their souls were dry tinder and her words the blazing brand. In this inferno of faith have countless heretics, witches, and aliens burned, and by its white heat have manifold imperial victories been forged. From her first days in the Scala Progenium, it was remarked that Junith Eruida exhibited almost frightening intensity of faith. Orphaned during the Gethsemane massacres, Eruida's traumatic experiences had clearly scarred her. Yet she did not break, but rather focused her rage against mankind's enemies, while cleaving to the absolute belief that the Emperor watched over his people. By the time she joined the ranks of the Order of our Martyred Lady, Eruida was already being watched with keen interest by its then Canoness Superior, Maria Somnadian. Eruida's talent for inspirational address, her intensity of faith, her somewhat maniacal fondness for, and prodigious skill with flamer weaponry, all had been noted by her drill abbots and suggested great things to come. Somnadian was not disappointed. Sister Eruida took the role of retributor with fervor, becoming both the inspirational linchpin of her squad and a truly ferocious warrior with her anointed heavy flamer. In the fullness of time, Eruida rose to the position of Celestian, plying her flames of purgation as one of the Canoness Superior's personal bodyguards. In that role, she fought at Somnadian's side across the killing fields of Fedoro, through the purge of the Nightmare Hive, and even to the gates of the city of the Poisoned King. Then came Hauline's Hope, and a fateful advance under fierce shelling from the heretical forces of the Iron Warriors. The Sororitas had just secured the blasted shell of St. Hauline's Basilica when a salvo of missiles crashed down upon it. The vaulted roof collapsed, the tall bastion towers fell, hundreds of sisters died as the structure caved in, and Somnadian was amongst them. It was then that the wounded Sister Eruida scaled the stair leading to the miraculously untouched pulpit from which St. Hauline had once preached. Fire rained down around her, but neither shot nor shell touched the pulpit as Eruida delivered a blistering address to her surviving sisters. Every eye lit with faith renewed, and with a mighty cry, the Order of our Martyred Lady swept onwards to a costly but decisive victory. Junith Eruida ascended to replace Maria Somnadian that day, appointed by the grace of the Emperor himself, and has ridden to war in the blessed pulpit ever since as the true blazing heart of her order. Order of the Valorous Heart. Girded by their unshakable faith, the Order of the Valorous Heart perseveres through the most grueling hardships to bring death to the Emperor's enemies. No amount of suffering is too great for them to bear, and all they endure is paid double to their foes. In both their battle tactics and acts of worship, the Sisters of the Valorous Heart adhere to the doctrines of stoicism and forbearance. Their practices stem from the teachings of their founder and matriarch, Lucia, who amongst Dominica's companions was said to be a paragon of constancy. She was the level-headed counterpoint to Catherine's burning passion. When the sisters of the convent sanctorum were split, Ecclesiarch Alexis XII wrote that Lucia's Order of the Valorous Heart was to be the immovable anvil to the fiery heart's crushing hammer. Yet from their inception, the Valorous Heart were far from a purely defensive force. Led by their matriarch, they aggressively sought worlds upon which the roots of heresy had grown deep, where witchcraft and profane mutation ran rampant, and then set themselves to the task of systematically expunging all traces of faithlessness. The Order willingly plunged itself into protracted battles amidst horrific conditions, laying siege to sorcerous cults on death worlds and storming Xenos planets that were inimical to human existence. aside from being undeniably effective in grinding away the enemy, these tactics also served as a form of penance. In the oldest manuscript of Lucia's teachings, recorded during her first address to her order, she explained that the Adepta Sororitas would forevermore carry the burden of atonement for the actions that she and the daughters of the Emperor had taken in supporting the pretender Goge Vandire. Lucia's martyrdom came at the hands of a recidivist sect. She was captured and tortured over long months, the heretics attempting to break her spirit and make her recant her faith in the Emperor. Lucia's eyes were gouged out, and she was forced to listen to the screams of 1,000 innocents as they themselves were tortured to death. Unknown to her, a group of her own sisters were amongst those killed in this way. But it is said that not one of them uttered a sound as they endured their torments, so as to not cause their matriarch any more pain than she had already suffered. Lucia eventually died, and the recidivist claimed loudly that they had shattered her resolve. But over the following decade, the Order of the Valorous Heart tracked down and captured every last member of the sect, all of whom confessed to lying about the Matriarch's lapse of faith. What became of those heretics is not known outside the Order. What is known is that a contingent of Sisters Hospitaller from the Order of the Silent Vow has been seconded to the Valorous Heart ever since that time, and its sisters have been putting their knowledge of life extension and pain enhancement to use deep beneath the sanctuary of Lucia's reprisal. The example set by Lucia in her life, as well as through her martyrdom, has led to the Order of the Valorous Heart employing methods of warfare that are unique among the Adepta Sororitas. At the outset of battle, the sisters pray to the Emperor and their matriarch for the strength to endure the horrors to come. They then launch offensives to cut off their foes' supply routes and lines of retreat. With the enemy locked in place, the Order begins sabotaging any infrastructure in the area. Water supplies are drained, fuel reserves destroyed, and pipelines transporting noxious substances are vented into the atmosphere. On feral worlds, anything that could provide the enemy with the least sustenance is incinerated. In short order, the battlefield is transformed into a harrowing desert, with a grinding war of attrition remaining as the only path to victory for either side. Given the nightmarish conditions in which they choose to do battle, it is no surprise that many sisters of the Valorous Heart bear gruesome scars. The stigmata of torn flesh is seen as a badge of honor amongst the Order, for it is a reminder of the sufferings of Lucia. A sister who loses an eye in battle is considered truly blessed, for it allows her to better understand the pain endured by her matriarch and to see more clearly the path of faith before her. Sisters of the Valorous Heart rarely accept numbing agents or pain-reducing stems when their wounds are being tended to, even where surgery or amputation is required. To avoid the experience of pain in this way would be to deny the power of faith to overcome all suffering. The bulk of the Order of the Valorous Heart's sanctuaries lie deep in the Ultima Segmentum, with the vast majority having been established during hard-fought wars against Xenos and traitor forces. Sanctified fortresses stand amidst Deathworld swamps, jagged mountain ranges, and barren wastelands that were scoured of life millennia ago. Relief sculptures and stained armor-glass panes within these sanctuaries depict Sororitas obliterating hordes of Xenos and roasting foul heretics in cleansing flames. Many of these sanctuary planets were plunged into darkness when the Great Rift tore open, and were invaded by demons or subjected to mass Drakari raids. Yet the Order has not wavered in its faith. Though many of its preceptories are cut off from the light of the Emperor, they believe he still sees their struggles. They refer to this time of great trial as the hour of a bacchanation, for the Imperium Nihilus has been blinded, just as Lucia was. But like their matriarch, the Order of the Valorous Heart have steeled themselves to endure whatever torments are thrust upon them. Order of the Bloody Rose. The Order of the Bloody Rose are the embodiment of the Emperor's hatred towards the heretic, the psyker, and the mutant. Their wars of faith are not waged to save the innocent, but to slaughter the guilty. For only in death can the vile be made pure. The matriarch of the Order of the Bloody Rose is Saint Mina, who was as renowned for her dark, brooding nature as she was for her deadly skill in battle. What few records survived through the Reign of Blood suggest that she served as Alicia Dominica's champion, and that when Sebastian Thor's armies descended upon Terra, she slew some of the mightiest invading warriors in hand-to-hand combat. One account, albeit riddled with inconsistencies, suggests that she dueled with the leader of the custodians who entered the ecclesiarchal palace during the siege, and that the two fought to a standstill before words of an alliance were finally spoken. Whether true or not, the Sisters of the Bloody Rose reserve Mina as the epitome of the martial virtues laid out by the daughters of the Emperor, and dedicate themselves to emulating her violent prowess. From their first war of faith, the Sisters of the Bloody Rose made a name for themselves as brutal executioners. They were dispatched to the Nephilim sector to put down the Slaneshi pain cults that had transformed many Imperial Shrine worlds into planet-spanning torture chambers. Hospitallers of the Order of Serenity and Dialogi of the Order of the Quill followed in the wake of the Sororitas, where they were to tend to the bodies and souls of the faithful after the afflicted worlds had been liberated by the Bloody Rose. But when the non-militant orders arrived in the war zone, they found only death. The militant sisters had moved from planet to planet, mercilessly butchering the cultists they encountered without stopping to free the pain cult's imprisoned victims. When the last of the Slanesh worshippers had been eradicated, the Canoness Superior of the Bloody Rose, who upon her death would become canonized as Saint Mari, penned the Thorn Treaties, using the blood of those sisters who had fallen to record the teachings of this war. In the treaties, she outlined that the path of least evil lies always with the swift extermination of those who oppose the faith, and therefore mercy in any form must come after the meting out of righteous anger. From the moment a sister joins the Bloody Rose, she is taught to foster and harness her most violent impulses so that they may be unleashed upon the enemies of the faith. Litanies of heretical deeds are intoned as novitiates engage in combat trials. The tales of spiritual traitors and vile apostates filling the trainees with hatred. Prayers that would be whispered in silence by other orders are bellowed loudly within the Bloody Rose's sanctuaries. In place of contemplative meditation, the sisters learn to light the fires of rage within themselves, even when they are not faced with provocation. Alongside such practices, they also train to focus their anger, for they are taught that to allow oneself to be overtaken by apoplexy is as great a sin as indulging in the notions of clemency. Through constant drilling, they learn to unleash their inner hatred only when it is most effective, channeling it with the explosive force of a shot fired from a bolt gun. The Bloody Rose's precepts of anger have truly brutal results when unleashed upon the battlefield. The sisters advance with disciplined maneuvers, using weight of fire to gain advantage over a flank, or employing cunning feints to draw their enemy into overcommitting. As soon as the foe is at close range, the sisters charge, striking at the moment they crash into the enemy lines, and screaming wrathful praise as they give vent to their hatred. Gun stocks are swung with enough force to shatter helms and the skulls within. Chain swords are driven mercilessly through torsos, then wrenched out and thrust again before the spilt innards hit the ground. The power-armored warriors deliver murderous kicks, punches, and elbows to crack bones and burst organs. But in this flurry of carnage, each sister attacks with practiced precision, her rage only manifesting in the instant of impact before it is once more reined in. The Order of the Bloody Rose believes sheer martial ferocity to be a manifestation of the Emperor's will. They pray to be granted the skill, alacrity, and outrage of their matriarch in battle. Often, a sister facing down a hulking chaos champion or Xenos monstrosity will glow with rage. Rivulets of energy gather around her into a crackling nimbus. Her eyes become a deep red, and tears of blood streak down her cheeks. She moves with lightning speed, dodging and parrying numerous death blows from her hated foe, before landing her own immaculate killing strike. Such miraculous transformations are met with cries of exaltation, for they know that Mina's soul is inhabiting the body of that blessed sister. Throughout the Imperium, there are many worlds once held by heretics that the Order of the Bloody Rose have sanctified by spilling of blood. Amongst these planets is Hydrafer, where Mina was martyred. It is said that the servants of Khorne attacked the matriarch while she was alone in prayer. No other soul saw what transpired, but when Mina's body was discovered, it was surrounded by the brutalized corpses of her enemies. Armored heads and limbs lay strewn amongst the rubble, and gore flowed in rivers through cracks in the flagstones. The circumstances of her martyrdom are enshrined in the symbol of the Bloody Rose, which has a pair of crossed blades dripping with fresh blood. Though the Order of the Bloody Rose has committed a significant contingent of its sisters to war zones along the Great Rift, the majority of its forces are battling against incursions coming from the galactic south. They have met the tendrils of Hive Fleet Leviathan and Hydra on multiple fronts, where they have butchered the ravenous creatures and the gene-stealer cults that worship them. They have also fought a series of harrowing battles against the Thousand Suns cult of duplicity, combating the sorcerous machinations of the Tzeentch worshippers with bolt, blade, and faith. Order of the Ebon Chalice. Obstinate in their traditions and indomitable in combat, the Sisters of the Ebon Chalice seek to perfect the martial disciplines of the Daughters of the Emperor, employing tactics that have been honed over millennia to annihilate the enemies of the Imperium. The Order of the Ebon Chalice was the first of the Orders Militant to be created, with its sisters drawn from the Convent Prioris on Holy Terra. Its founder, leader, and matriarch was Alicia Dominica, slayer of the tyrant Vandire and chosen of the Emperor. Under her guidance, the Ebon Chalice quickly established itself as the exemplar against which all other orders would be measured. Dominica herself served as the military and spiritual head of the Adepta Sororitas. The Sisters of the Order displayed devotional and martial discipline that was second to none, with their fortitude in battle matched only by the depth of their faith. In their training and on the field of war, they cleaved unerringly to the doctrines laid out by the Daughters of the Emperor, with the only adaptations being those that incorporated the use of modern imperial weaponry and armor. A desire to emulate the perfection of Dominica burned in the heart of every sister of the Ebon Chalice. Dominica repeatedly showed herself to be the God Emperor's most worthy champion, displaying her strength, constancy, and tactical acumen across myriad war zones. While other orders battled the faithless in the distant reaches of the Imperium, the Sisters of the Ebon Chalice dedicated themselves to safeguarding the sanctity of Terra and the Segmentum Solar. Planet by planet, system by system, the Order expanded their parish, rooting out cults buried deep in the bowels of hive worlds, and eradicating mutant conclaves that were infesting barren moons and isolated outposts. Shrine worlds that had long ago fallen to Xenos invasions were besieged by waves of chanting warriors. Wherever the servants of chaos were found, they were met with damning oaths and cleansing flames. As they brought more territories under their care, the Sisters of the Ebon Chalice were able to expose scores of planetary governors and Astra Militarum officers whose practices did not conform to the exact letter of the Imperial Creed. Preachers and confessors were called upon to make examples of the unrighteous, and where such efforts to enforce true faith were met with resistance, the Sisters of the Ebon Chalice marched forth to purge the impure. No sinner was safe under the exacting gaze of Dominica's order. During these early wars of faith, Dominica carried the Grail of Ages with her to war. the goblet of black stone that was created to be the embodiment of the Matriarch's communion with the Emperor. Little is known about the Grail and the power it held. Few accounts exist of this relic's holy energy being unleashed on the battlefield. The details they provide range between miraculous and heretical. Awed ecclesiarchal scribes wrote that when Dominica poured out the vessel's contents, the Emperor's voice boomed, and with a single word, shattered whole armies. Well-guarded records of the Astra Telepathica show instances in which every psyker on a planet spontaneously burst into flames when the Matriarch of the Ebon Chalice carried the Grail into battle. It is believed that there are tales of the Grail of Ages within the eldritch tomes of the Black Library, and possibly even in the writhing pages of the Book of Magnus. As for the Sisters of the Ebon Chalice, they do not speak of its powers, but have always professed that the relic symbolizes their sacred duty and eternal burden, that they are the bearers of the secrets learnt by Dominica before the Golden Throne, and are the vessels of the God Emperor's holy truth. This goes some way to explaining why the Order has ever sought to destroy any texts concerning the Grail, and have immolated their scribes as heretics. After several centuries of faithful service to the Emperor and her Order, Alicia Dominica was martyred, falling in combat during the scouring of Friedeswide's world. Not since the passing of Sebastian Thor had the bell tower of the ecclesiarchal palace tolled so dolefully. Her martyrdom left a gaping void in the organization of the Adepta Sororitas, for none amongst the ranks considered themselves worthy to follow in her hallowed footsteps. Eventually, Sister Palmiro, the Dialogus of the Order of the Holy Word, was chosen by her peers as the most suitable to take over from the fallen Matriarch, and became Abbess of the Adepta Sororitas. Palmiro accepted, but not before solemnly expressing that she could never hope to equal her predecessor's faith, vision, or fortitude. It was this humility that made Palmiro the obvious choice, for to serve the Sororitas, the Ecclesiarchy, and the Emperor in Dominica's stead was regarded not as a mark of honor, but as an undertaking of a grave and thankless responsibility. The Sisters of the Ebon Chalice have striven to embody Dominica's perfection in all that they do. While they have waged wars of faith across the galaxy, they remain a bulwark of faith in the Segmentum Solar, combating gross nonconformity with flame and blade. They view themselves as first amongst the Sororitas, the order that all others must strive to emulate. On those rare and grave occasions where a group of sisters has a lapse in their faith, it is the Ebon Chalice that is called upon to bring the judgment of the Emperor and the Ecclesiarch and Dominica down upon them. Like all of humanity, the Order of the Ebon Chalice has been faced with untold horrors since the Great Rift opened. Alongside their allies of old, the Adeptus Custodes, Space Marines, and Adeptus Mechanicus, the spiritual descendants of Dominica fight to keep the unleashed forces of chaos from overwhelming the Segmentum Solar. The Sisters have eradicated several warbands of Chaos Space Marines, most notably the Blades of the Despoiler coronate host of the Black Legion, whose path of slaughter was headed directly for Terra. Yet the Ebon Chalice has also taken heavy losses. Though the Scala Progenium proffers a constant stream of new recruits, only the most promising are accepted into the order, and of those, only a small percentage prove themselves the grueling initiation rites to become battle sisters. This has left the Sisters of the Ebon Chalice straining against the sheer weight of the heretical incursions, but they are far from broken. Each is an expert in the ancient forms of battle established by the Daughters of the Emperor, a warrior who has mastered both their weaponry and their faith. Those who prove themselves worthy enough to rise to the rank of Celestian or Zephyrim are amongst the most skilled veterans in the entire Adepta Sororitas. The most honored of these sisters are even entrusted with a portion of the hallowed truth learnt by their matriarch in the chamber of the Golden Throne. Order of the Argent Shroud. Like a silver bolt, the Sisters of the Argent Shroud strike at the Emperor's enemies. They are renowned for their speed in combat, and are often first into the fray, where their faith in their protector saint shines bright. The matriarch of the Argent Shroud is Sylvana, first martyred and most mysterious of Dominica's bodyguard. Her service as head of the order was brief. Shortly after Alicia Dominica had founded the Order of the Ebon Chalice, the remaining sisters of the convent priors were placed under Sylvana's command. But Sylvana was struck down before launching a single war of faith. The most reliable records concur that a death cult assassin poisoned her, although these accounts vary wildly in their speculations as to motive. Some suggest the murderer was an agent still loyal to Van Dyer's vision of the ecclesiarchy, whereas others propose that the forces of the heretical Alpha Legion played a hand in the fell deed. The Sisters of the Argent Shroud hold that it was Dominica whom the assassin had attempted to slay, and Sylvana had sacrificed herself in order to save the Emperor's chosen one. This is in keeping with her character, for on numerous occasions she had placed herself in harm's way to protect the least of her allies. The Journal of Ecclesiarch Alexis XXII relates that while Sylvana's body was laid in state within the inner sanctum of the convent priors, after 7 days it mysteriously vanished. Only a silver image of her bones was left, imprinted on her death shroud, and it is from this treasured relic that her order received its name. The Order of the Argent Shroud teaches that deeds have more power than words when it comes to purifying the spirit and purging the taint of corruption from the Imperium. This belief is derived from the example of Sylvana, whose acts of bravery and faithfulness were well recorded during the age of apostasy, yet not a single word spoken by her is recorded in any surviving transcription from that time. Her sisters emulate this by speaking very little and by entering long periods of complete silence whenever they engage in training. This limitation of speech does not preclude them from prayer or worship, and like the members of other orders, they still chant hymns of wrathful purgation as they march into battle. But Sisters of the Argent Shroud believe that it is more righteous to provide their service to the God Emperor than it is to ask for his holy favor. They avoid formulating grand stratagems and rarely communicate intended tactics to their allies, to the ire of many imperial generals. Simply put, the Order places its trust in the divine guidance of the Emperor more than in the carefully orchestrated plans of his fallible servants. The results achieved by the Argent Shroud soon put paid to any misgivings. Spearheads of silver-clad warriors race toward teeming Xenos throngs, and invasion cathedrams hurtle onto worlds writhing with chaos energy. With swift surges, the Sororitas smash through the defensive formations of far larger armies, destroying monstrous artillery batteries stationed behind the front lines, and permanently silencing the debauchery of heretical enemy commanders. Lightning-fast assaults are followed by rapid withdrawals, and as the foe reels in confusion, the Sisters of the Ardent Shroud reform and strike again. By committing themselves so boldly to these offensives, the warriors of the Argent Shroud often leave themselves cut off from support, surrounded and outgunned. But it is in such dire circumstances that their faith shines brightest. Filled with divine conviction, the Sororitas fight on against impossible odds, standing strong amidst the carnage as they drop their foes one by one, knowing that Sylvana watches over them in battle. Those sisters who fall often save their entire squad from annihilation with their dying action, throwing themselves into the line of fire just as their matriarch would have done. Due to their propensity for hit-and-run assaults, the Sisters of the Argent Shroud have some of the deadliest and most experienced shock troops of all of the Adepta Sororitas. Many of the Order's commanderies boast large contingents of Dominion squads, who are deployed en masse to break through the defensive lines of unsuspecting enemies, or are sent in small numbers to infiltrate fortresses, macro bunkers, and command centers in hostile territory. These dominions are also leaders in many of the Order's rites of worship, their prayers on the battlefield often being the first intoned before being echoed by the other sisters. A peculiarity amongst the Order of the Argent Shroud lies with how they treat their dead. Where the members of other orders cry out when a comrade is slain, reciting prayers to guide the fallen soul to the Emperor, and oaths of holy vengeance against the enemy, the Sisters of the Argent Shroud say not a word. Amongst their ranks, death is met with silence. Certain ecclesiarchal scholars attribute this to a belief within the Order that martyrdom is a luxury, a reprieve from a sacred duty that should only come when there are no more enemies left to slay. Yet the dead sororitas are still handled with great care after the fighting has finished. The martyrs are removed from the battlefield in somber processions, their wounds cleaned and dressed, their armor repaired and polished. They are laid to rest for 7 days in the sanctuary in which they served. After that, the bodies are removed, though what becomes of them after this point is not known by anyone outside the Order. The majority of the Argent Shroud sanctuaries lie in the region of space that abuts the jagged mass of warp storms known as the Great Rift. During the Noctis Aeterna, when chaos energies were blasted across the galaxy, and the light of the Holy Astronomicon was temporarily extinguished, Many of these sanctuary worlds were thought lost. Screaming maelstroms enveloped entire sub-parishes, while countless other worlds under the Order's watch were bathed in the warping glow of the cicatrix maledictum. In the harrowing years since, the Order has continued to fight against the marauding chaos forces without showing any signs of diminishment. The Sororitas appear without warning in raging war zones along the breadth of the Great Rift, striking with crippling speed at their unprepared enemies. Multiple preceptories that were thought lost have since been seen in battle, and though they say nothing of the fates of their sanctuary worlds, they fight with unmatched hatred against the servants of the Dark Gods. Order of the Sacred Rose. Wreathed in holy light and possessed of divine serenity, the Sisters of the Sacred Rose are the calm at the center of a violent storm. Their hymns of hope and salvation are underscored in battle by the crack of bolts and the roar of burning promethium. More so than any other order, the Sacred Rose avow that they are not only devout servants of the God Emperor, they are the conduits of his divine will. Through them is his glory made manifest in the galaxy, for their words and actions are guided by his infallible wisdom. The Order teaches that victory comes from faith and faith alone. If a warrior has enough faith, she can command the stars to consume her enemies, and the Emperor will make it so. The Sisters act on this belief in every battle, war, and crusade they wage, trusting that the triumphal slaughter of their foes has been preordained. Even when one of their number falls, they know that this too is part of the Emperor's plan. A single martyr can spark a fire in 1,000 souls, giving rise to an inferno of faith that can never be extinguished. These beliefs give the Sisters of the Sacred Rose an air of devout serenity that approaches that held by their matriarch, Arabella. She was renowned for her calm nature in the face of horror, and was known among Alesia Dominica's guard as being the most even-tempered. It is widely told that Arabella was instrumental in the negotiations between Dominica and the custodian who led the matriarchs before the Golden Throne. Arabella subsequently earned the honorific of Liberator, for she sought to break the shackles of fear and doubt that bound the faithful, and strove to free humanity from the evils of the faithless. Though a formidable combatant, her true strength sprang from the abundance of miracles that are said to have happened in her presence. There are stories of heretics imploding into lumps of smoldering flesh as her gaze fell upon them, being crushed by the weight of their own wickedness, or having their eyes melt from their face as they beheld her glory. Though Arabella was only canonized posthumously, she performed countless miracles during her lifetime. She traveled the Imperium, serving as a commander and beacon of faith for many decades. The circumstances surrounding her martyrdom are not recorded in any ecclesiarchal text, but in the 38th millennium, the Order of the Sacred Rose was founded in her name. Ecclesiarch Decus VI formed the order from the Sisters of the Convent Prioris, and from the outset the Sacred Rose proved themselves worthy of their matriarch. Through their wars of faith, they brought the light of the Emperor to regions long thought lost to the darkness. Imperial planets were freed from the yoke of heretical tyrants. Cabals of Xenos mystics were hunted down and butchered, and sanctuaries were established to serve as outposts of divinity in the most remote corners of the Imperium. The Sacred Rose forged a sizable parish in the Ultima Segmentum, but like Arabella, they brought their faith to bear across the galaxy. When the Sisters of the Sacred Rose march to war, they do so in a state of holy grace. Scores of sororitas advance in perfect tactical harmony, adapting fluidly to the shifting tides of battle. Squads unleash the firepower of the Holy Trinity with measured discipline. As they do so, they lift their voices, singing lilting hymns in praise of the Emperor. This symphony of choral worship and roaring weaponry quickly drowns out the screams of dying mutants and the wet tearing of heretical flesh. The Sisters press the attack wherever the enemy shows weakness, sending frag grenades sailing into gaps and formations, and blasting the exposed flanks of artillery with superheated melta beams. Where the foe shows strength, the sororitas stand firm, locking ranks against assaults and cutting down onrushing attackers with deliberate and devastating salvos. Yet it is their seamless pairing of faith with physical prowess that makes them a truly indomitable force. Miraculous bursts of speed are factored into redeployment maneuvers, whilst the spontaneous combustion of nearby foes is relied upon as much as any chainsword or bolt pistol. Assured of the Emperor's providence, the Sisters of the Sacred Rose maintain their ineffable serenity as they slaughter all before them. The Order of the Sacred Rose are often accompanied to war by an inordinate number of ecclesiarchal followers. Ministorum priests and their fanatical conclaves flock to the sororitas, eager to witness the miracles that will unfold. As such, even small missions are rarely short of soldiers. The core of sororitas may be supported by many devotees of the imperial cult, their prayers and cries of penance intermingling with the battle hymn of the Sacred Rose. Canonesses of the Order welcome these faithful auxiliaries and teach the Sisters in their charge that the Emperor has the power to act through the least of his servants. Arabella herself was known to gather the unwashed rabble to her banner times of battle, and it is said that the power of her conviction transformed them into armies of indomitable warriors. The Order's ability to draw others to their cause has been of crucial value since the Great Rift tore open. The occluding mass of warp storms has plunged hundreds of thousands of worlds into perpetual darkness. Astropathic lines of communication have been severed by the psychic upheaval. Billions of distress calls have been lost in the screaming void. Cut off from the light of the Astronomicon, navigators are unable to guide ships between distant stars. And so even those cries for help that are received can rarely be answered with action. The majority of the Sacred Rose's sanctuaries lie deep within the Imperium Nihilus, but few have succumbed to the nightmares unleashed across that half of the galaxy. The Sisters of the Sacred Rose have remained a steadfast beacon of hope, and have fought the enemies of the faith with the same resoluteness of spirit that they have always possessed. Where many worlds were consumed by panic and fear, even before the servants of the Dark Gods fell upon them, those under the care of the Order have become bastions of defiance. Sororitas patrols execute anyone who expresses doubt in the security of the Imperium. At the same time, Astra Militarum regiments are commandeered by the Order, and soldiers showing the slightest hints of mutation are expunged. On each planet, the Sororitas lead defenses against legions of demons and heretic Astartes. Yet it is not only their own worlds they fight to protect. The Sisters of the Sacred Rose have miraculously appeared in multiple war zones across the Imperium Nihilus. Few question how the Sororitas were able to hear their calls for reinforcements, or how they managed to navigate amidst the darkness and horror. Those that do are told by the Sisters that Arabella always provides guidance, even when the Emperor's will is not clear.